For decades, Robert Redford looked untouchable, cool under pressure, allergic to spectacle, and mysteriously immune to the ego wars that swallowed so many of his peers. But the calm surface wasn't the whole story. Behind closed doors, Redford kept a private ledger of collaborators who drained the joy from the work, not whispers, names. One will sting. By the end, you may never watch a beloved classic the same way again. Gene Hackman, the sledgehammer, in a violin shop. Redford and Gene Hackman crossed paths early, most memorably around the time of Downhill Racer. On paper, it should have worked. Two disciplined actors with razor-sharp instincts. In practice, their methods collided. Hackman was a battering ram of intensity. He prized blunt force over fine brushwork, preferred confrontation over consensus, and treated rehearsal like a proving ground. Redford, who approached scenes like a careful composition, saw the volatility as a tax the story shouldn't have to pay. Rumors from crew who were there paint the same picture. Hackman testing boundaries, challenging direction, and refusing to move on until he felt the energy was right. Sometimes right meant louder, harder, faster. The flashpoint, according to people who've told the story for years, came during a quietly emotional scene. Hackman hated a lighting setup, vanished into his trailer, and wouldn't emerge. Minutes turned to nearly an hour. Production froze. And then Redford, calm but firm, walked to the trailer and made it simple. Show up or step aside. Hackman came back. The scene got done. The relationship did not. Redford never denied Hackman's power on screen. He admired it, but admiration isn't the same thing as compatibility. Privately, he compared Hackman's presence to a sledgehammer in a violin shop, staggeringly effective for certain jobs, disastrous when the moment required anything delicate. Over the years, insiders say Redford quietly pushed Hackman's name off casting lists when he had the leverage to do it, not because he doubted the results, but because the cost was too high. Careers can run in parallel without ever intersecting again, and theirs did. What's striking is the restraint. No public mudslinging, no late-night talk show zingers. Just a choice: avoid the storm and keep the work clean. But that choice carved a permanent line between two giants who could have, on a different timeline, delivered more together. And if Hackman was the raw flame, the next name brought a different kind of heat, ideological, relentless, and impossible to contain. James Woods, chaos in the casting room. The stories about James Woods in Redford's orbit live half in legend, half in first-hand recollection from casting rooms that still feel warm to the touch. Woods came in for projects Redford was shaping, supporting parts that demanded precision over spectacle. The reads went sideways. According to people who claim to have been there, one audition drifted into a debate about foreign policy mid-scene. Another turned into a point-by-point critique of the script's worldview. It wasn't about the character. It was about control. Redford has never been a fan of intellectual dominance games. He's surgical with his words, deliberate with his choices, and famously concerned with the temperature of a room. Woods, brilliant and kinetic, is the opposite. He brings live current, brainy, barbed, volatile. In a courtroom drama, that can be electricity. In the wrong hands, it's a blown fuse. Reports claim Redford closed the script, stood, and walked out on one of those auditions with a line that summed up the experience. If debate was the goal, he'd enroll in a class. On a set, the story wins. From then on, industry chatter says the verdict was final. Redford's casting notes allegedly carried a blunt tag by Woods' name. Never again. Woods, for his part, didn't let the tension die in private. Without naming Redford, he'd needle Hollywood humanitarians who preach calm but run their sets like generals. People who knew the backstory connected the dots. Redford didn't. He never engaged. For him, the judgment wasn't personal morality or politics, though the divide there was real. It was chemistry. You can bottle lightning or burn the house down. He chose not to play arsonist. What lingers is a question that haunts every director who also acts? How much friction makes a performance sharper, and when does it tip into chaos? Redford drew that line early with Woods, and once he drew it, he never moved it. But not every clash exploded in the room. Some wore people down one take at a time. Dustin Hoffman, magic on screen, sandpaper off. All the President's Men is a high-wire act of restraint, a thriller built on phone calls, footnotes, and late-night typewriters. Redford and Dustin Hoffman made it look effortless. It wasn't. Hoffman thrives in spontaneity. He experiments mid-take, shifts his angle in tiny increments, and hunts for sparks the script didn't predict. Redford hates losing the spine of a scene. He builds momentum by precision. Hit the note, then the next note, and let the melody do the work. Crew members from that film have said it was quietly tense, never explosive. Two unwavering philosophies negotiating space. Hoffman would rehearse one way, shoot another, reshape lines in the moment, or step into Redford's light to tilt the visual gravity of the frame. Day by day, the adjustments accumulated like sand in a shoe. There's a story about a newsroom phone sequence that ballooned to 7 takes because the tone kept morphing. In the theater, it plays beautifully. On set, Redford was reportedly seething by the end. Ask 10 people who were there what it meant, and you'll get 10 answers. What we know is simple. The film is a masterpiece, and the collaboration never repeated. Redford's line, when asked why, was almost comically brief. Once was enough. No jabs, no grievance tour, just a boundary. He valued cohesion. Hoffman chased lightning. They caught it once. That was the miracle and the limit. Here's what makes this more than a personality mismatch. Redford was already shifting toward directing, where control is oxygen. Watching Hoffman rewire scenes in real time wasn't just irritating, it contradicted the way Redford believed stories stayed alive in the edit. To him, improvisation is seasoning. To Hoffman, it can be the meal. Both approaches can win awards. They just don't share a kitchen easily. Then came a partnership where the conflict wasn't craft versus craft. It was art versus branding. Tom Cruise, are we acting or selling an ad? By the time Lions for Lambs came together, Redford had logged decades protecting tone. He wanted an austere, timely moral drama, small rooms, big ideas, human cost. Tom Cruise arrived as co-star and producer with a different playbook, one built on optics, messaging, and strategic control. People close to the movie have described early meetings that felt like marketing summits, camera angles, wardrobe silhouette, poster concepts. Even the rhythm of reaction shots were discussed in terms of perception. There's a line Redford is said to have murmured on set, half a question, half a verdict. Are we acting or are we selling a campaign ad? It wasn't contempt. It was diagnosis. Cruise's system is ruthlessly effective at delivering a product that looks exactly like it intends to look. Redford's system is built to vanish the product entirely and leave only story. You can't run both simultaneously without collisions. Rehearsals showed the rift. Cruise wanted stylists present and lighting tweaked on the fly to shape a physical silhouette. Redford wanted long, quiet beats that sit in discomfort. In post, the tug-of-war intensified over micro-edits, reaction lengths, emphasis, tempo. Stories have it the studio often sided with Cruise. Redford delivered what he could live with and stepped away from most of the press. Later, he called it among the most frustrating experiences of his career. None of this indicts Cruise's effectiveness. It just exposes an irreconcilable gap. Redford wanted to hold a mirror to institutional failure. Cruise saw a chance for rally point redemption. One man sculpted vulnerability, the other engineered gravitas. The final film sits uneasily between them, a document of two philosophies pulling in opposite directions. From studio muscle to actorly micromanagement, the next name was a storm that never truly passed. Faye Dunaway, a barometer that always read pressure. 3 Days of the Condor thrives on paranoia and poise. On screen, Redford and Faye Dunaway crackle, icy attraction, clipped trust, and a constant hum of danger. Off-screen, trust was the problem. Dunaway's reputation for meticulous control preceded her. She protected her process like a fortress, reviewing dailies, interrogating emotional logic, requesting rewrites late, and pushing for lighting that matched the exact emotional frequency she wanted to emit. For some directors, that's a dream collaborator. For Redford, guarded, momentum-driven, it became exhausting. People who watched the dance say the tension didn't break things. It bent everything into a permanent curve. There's a story about a small line that spiraled into multiple resets because the syllabic stress felt wrong to Dunaway. Redford's patience has edges. Midway through one of those sessions, he reportedly exhaled a line that captured his whole philosophy. "We're not building a watch," meaning, "Stop polishing the gear, play the time." The friction spiked in a closed-door talk with Sidney Pollack about character motivation. Dunaway argued for psychological scaffolding. Redford snapped that it was espionage, not Chekhov. She left. She returned next day as if it were a weather change, not a war. The work continued. The atmosphere never fully thawed. Afterward, Redford reached for distance. Insert shots were finished with a double whenever possible. There were no fond reunion panels years later, no nostalgia circuits with sweet anecdotes. What remained was the film, cool, controlled, and unforgettable. Sometimes you pay a human price for that particular flavor of unforgettable. And sometimes the clash is pure method versus map, the jazz player against the composer. Robert Duvall, jazz versus composition on the natural. Redford sculpted Roy Hobbs with the patience of a luthier. Weeks of bodywork, breath control, and measured stillness that could carry meaning without words. Robert Duvall walked in as Max Mercy with a reporter's snarl and an improviser's hunger. He trusted the gut. He wanted to play. Day 1, it looked like the perfect tension. Day 10, the friction sang was visible around the edges of the set. Duvall would tweak lines in the makeup chair, let sarcasm undercut a beat that Redford had spent hours arranging, or throw a new rhythm into a confrontation that was supposed to land like a symphonic downbeat. There's a reason directors who love improvisation also love guardrails. Without them, tone can evaporate. Redford, already seeing the movie in his head, watched his precise arcs wobble take by take. The blow-up, people say, happened mid-scene when the difference finally stood up and demanded a verdict. Redford needed a particular emotional crescendo. Duvall didn't believe in crescendos planned on paper. The argument stretched long enough for the room to go quiet in that special way Cruise recognizes dangerous. When it ended, they finished the page and moved on, professionals to the bone. But some fractures don't heal on the same project. Press tours kept them apart when possible. A second collaboration never materialized. Redford's summary years later circulates in different wordings, but the same metaphor. Duvall wanted to play jazz. Redford wanted to play composition. Jazz can be divine. So can composition. Put two masters of different churches in one choir without a conductor they both trust, and the hymn goes sideways. All of that is friction you can see from the outside if you squint. The last name is the one fans don't want to believe, because the mythology was perfect. Paul Newman, the Heartbreaker. Their names are welded together in movie history. Butch and Sundance, Hooker and Gondorf, two halos turned sideways. But the silhouette the public loved hit a hairline crack that widened with time. With Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, the current between Redford and Paul Newman felt playful and clean. Sunlight and dust. Jokes that sounded like friendship, because then they were. By the time the sting rolled around, gravity had shifted a few degrees. Newman had more leverage. He used it the way great stars do when they care, by nudging casting, arguing for tonal choices, and stepping into early conversation with the studio to keep the production's spine straight. None of that is villain behavior. It's leadership in a system that often needs it. But for Redford, who guarded his space carefully and despised being treated like garnish to someone else's entree. The new shape of the partnership felt less like camaraderie and more like competition. Friends have said Redford bristled at the public's reflex to point cameras at Newman first, as if Newman were the soul and Redford the echo. Headlines leaned Newman. Questions at press junkets flowed Newman. Every duo has an axis. Fans put theirs through Paul. Angels can't help their angles. Redford, famously proud in quiet ways, felt the tilt. There's a line people attribute to him in private, half compliment, half confession. Newman was charming, and sometimes he played dumb to get more room than he should have. Whether you hear that as envy, candor, or both depends on which man you loved first. What matters is how it landed. The friendship never exploded, it thinned. They stayed gracious, honored each other in public, and kept the mythology polished. But movies together? Offers came and went. Timing, they said. Those who stayed close insist timing wasn't the problem. Trust was. Does that revelation ruin anything? It shouldn't. It humanizes the magic. Two brilliant men made lightning twice, then did the healthiest thing friends can do when the weather turns. They protected the part that wasn't broken by stepping away from the part that was. The screen kept their best snapshots. The rest belongs to them. Pull back from the names and a pattern appears, a quiet code that governed how Redford survived a brutal industry without becoming brutal himself. The quiet code. Why Redford drew lines. Where he did, Redford's boundaries weren't random. Watch the choices and you see the rules. First, protect tone. Whether it was Hoffman's improvisational drift, Duvall's jazz, or Cruise's branding calculus, anything that threatened the spine of the story triggered his immune system. He isn't anti-improv, anti-power, or anti-marketing. He's anti-tilt. If the compass needle spun, he left the room. Second, keep the room calm. The Hackman and Woods stories illustrate the same principle from opposite ends. Explosive temperament on one side, combat debate intellect on the other. Redford managed both with the same tool. Refusal. He'd speak once, directly, and then reshape the team or walk away. That isn't fragility. It's resource management by a man who understood how easily nerves poison the lens. Third, minimize public bloodshed. Redford didn't feed feuds. He declined reunions he didn't want, dodged panel traps, and gave elegant non-answers where others might have scored points. In Hollywood, silence is harder than confession. It pays less and ages better. He chose the long game. Finally, separate myth from maintenance. The Newman drift proves it. Keeping the mythology intact for audiences while accepting that the day-to-day became complicated is a form of stewardship. It preserves the work you made together and the affection people built around it. That's not cowardice, it's craft extending beyond the frame. So what do we do with all this? We test the films again, this time with the lights on backstage. What these clashes did to the work. Here's the paradox fans hate, but artists live with. Tension can sharpen a scene and fray a crew on the same day. Hackman's edge gave certain moments a serrated realism you can't fake. Hoffman's unpredictable pivots inject oxygen into tightly scripted journalism. Duvall's improvisational lashings electrify dialogue that might otherwise lie flat. Dunaway's refusal to move on before the weather in a line felt right yields icy textures that still stick to the teeth. Cruise's immaculate control applied to the right vehicle creates iconography. Redford knew all of that. He didn't flee tension. He quarantined toxicity. The difference shows in the finished product. His best films feel internally coherent, their rhythm steady even when the plot shakes. That coherence is not accident. It's boundary. Fans often beg for dream pairings. What if we got Redford Hoffman again, or a late-career Redford Newman coda? The ledger in this story answers, sometimes the reason a movie feels perfect is because the people who made it refused to break the spell a second time. And that brings the question back to us, the audience, sitting in the dark, deciding what to keep. Sunshine and shadows. Robert Redford's legend is half sunlight, the calm eyes, the measured voice, the stubborn faith in stories that mean something. The other half is shadow, vetoes spoken softly, doors closed firmly, partnerships retired without eulogies because the work mattered more than the reunion poster. You can call that ego, you can call it discipline. It's probably both. Great careers usually are. The list you've just walked through isn't a hit piece. It's a map of where one artist drew lines to protect what he loved. Some names are inevitable, some hurt, and one, Newman, rewrites a memory without erasing it. If you feel a little unsettled, good. That means you still care about what the movies did to you the first time. They can do it again, even with the lights on. So here's the question I'll leave with you. Did these private collisions make the film sharper, pressure forging diamonds, or did they cost us better versions we'll never get to see? Drop your take below. And if you want more of the real stories under the gloss, rivalries, unlikely truces, and the backstage moments that quietly shaped your favorite scenes, hit subscribe and turn on the bell. The next one digs into another adored icon whose off-camera choices will change how you watch their greatest role. You won't see it coming,